Folks, ba-da-ba-ba-ba. I am your host, DashV, and this is product placement. I mean, this is retro reload, where we do not bow to sponsors. So with me today, I've got who are you again?
Uh, I don't know. Who am I? I mean, who am I really?
Wow, that's kind of
I
deep.
mean, I go by name, but what's in a name? I don't know. I'm just here. Hey.
It's very that's much more meta than I think the show is able to handle. So, folks, we
Well,
got Kyle with us today. So thanks for being on board, Kyle.
oh, that's who I am, right?
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes we have to remind him he's just not he's not having a good week there.
No.
For, for self remembrance. So
Yeah.
although speaking of not having a good week, heard recently that Xbox Games Pass, right, is going to be including Microsoft Studios games, so games that are available on Xbox One and Microsoft Store. These games are going to be available at launch through Xbox Games Pass subscription. That's pretty awesome for anybody that has the subscription, and folks who are on the fence and maybe thinking of getting one, two, or all three of those games. It might be picking up the subscription and just playing them to completion might be the cheaper option there.
So, do we know, have they released any games for that? Like the Microsoft Labs made or whatever so far that would be examples of what we might see?
Microsoft Studios, you mean?
Or Microsoft Studios, yeah. Sorry.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think this has implications for other games like Gears of War and things like that.
Okay.
So yeah, I definitely think, and non-Microsoft Studios just in general. I mean, Games Pass has tons of stuff on there. If you want to play the Mega Man Legacy Collection 1 and 2, those are on Game Pass. There's quite a few games actually that are there for you to grab, and play within the subscription, window there and stuff. So, personally, I think this is a good move for Microsoft. I think a lot of people are going to buy it. I think Microsoft, is smart from a business perspective as trying to move to a gaming as a service type model. I think that there's more money to be had in that than in you know than going the other just trying to release digital or physical games. I think it's a nice incentive to kind of anybody that was still kind of holding out against digital. Well, now it's like, okay, yeah, you don't technically own it, but you know what? You're not paying ownership level prices to get access to it either. You're getting access to a lot of really quality content, not just stuff that's been out for a while that they're still trying to like milk money off of. Um, you know, I think the Games Pass has a really good selection. And what would be really interesting is if they're able to move, upgrade that to a model where would be cool is you get the Xbox Games Pass on your Xbox One, but then you can play, if they have cross play games or play anywhere titles rather, as they call them in Xbox land. If my Games Pass subscription worked on Windows 10 as well as PC, that would be pretty awesome. That would actually be really hard to that'd be really hard to ignore.
Mm, yeah.
So, and I think, this is, maybe at least as far as the Xbox library is concerned, this might be bad news for GameStop.
So
I
what
mean,
do you think? Yeah, what do you think about that? Like, what's your your thought behind that?
so if you think about the model, I apologize, folks, but the consequence of us having the show early is that I'm going to eat while we have the show. Oh, sorry. Microsoft or, McDonald's soft. I didn't mean it. There you go. Your product placement is still prominently there. So they can, I hate having to move to product placement, folks, but the truth is with the news we got last week of, YouTube and the ad revenue, and we're under 1,000 subscribers. I'm sorry. Unless you want to hear me going ba da ba da ba, I'm loving it every single show. Get us more subscribers so I don't have to find alternate revenue streams. All right.
Can't skip these ads.
So I'm just kidding. All that was phony. Like I am like McDonald's is okay. I do legitimately. I'm having lunch or dinner rather a little bit later than I normally do. So Kyle, you'll be able to get a few words in, but off my tangent and back to your original question, right? We never get into tangents on Retro Reload ever.
Oh, never. No.
We're always 100% on topic here. No, back to your question. The reason that I think that this is bad news for GameStop, at least from the Xbox library standpoint, is if a lot of the money that they're making is on games that are newer, new enough that like people still want it, but they can get it at like a discount. So like folks going in and buying, let's say Shadow of the Colossus next month, playing it in a month or a week or a weekend or whatever, beating it, and then immediately taking it back, right? Like there's people that are going to pick it up for $50, play it, beat it in a week, take it back to GameStop, get $30 for it or $40 for it, and put that down toward a new game, right?
Yeah.
Because you got to strike while the iron's hot. GameStop's going to turn around, put that on the shelf for, what, $45 or $40 or whatever it is, right? So I think for on the Xbox side of the house, what you're actually going to see happen is you're going to see people getting the Game Pass subscription. They're going to go onto Game Pass, download Crackdown 3, and they're going to just play it to their heart's content, finish it, complete it, get all their online, you know, play out of it that they can stomach, and then they don't really have to worry about hurrying up and selling it, right? As long as they keep their Game Pass subscription active, they have it as long as it's still on the Game Pass. So there's no incentive for them to really. There's nothing for them to go back to GameStop for and actually sell. And since GameStop makes more money off of reselling the old games than it does the new games, I think this is really going to hurt their revenue, at least as far as Xbox game sales go. They might sell a lot of new games, and they might sell a lot of Xbox, One consoles, but I don't think that's going to help them out as much as say selling, Gears of War 5, right? I think if you're going to be able to get that on Xbox Game Pass at some point, especially at launch, you're going to miss all those launch day sales. Well, not all of them, but a significant portion of launch day sales from the people that already have Game Pass. And then that's going to be a series of people that don't get it, play through it, get full of it, and then sell it while they can still get some decent coin off of it. So, and we saw this model already happen with games like Destiny, right? Where a lot of people got it based on the hype. A lot of people stuck with it, but a lot of people returned it. Like within 2 months, you could buy Destiny for like $20. So, because it was just flooding the used market, and that's not. I don't think that that's going to be the case much longer with Xbox games if they go this route with other games.
Yeah. So that kind of I was thinking of a couple things we could touch on too. Because if we were to go to like a primarily a distribution model like a subscription service, like Netflix or whatever else, where essentially maybe this is to the extreme a bit, but in a way like not needing to actually buy games, just using kind of a rental service every month for a certain amount. Especially if that includes okay, he must have muted then. I was having a hard time hearing over there. Okay. So I was saying, especially if we change that. So for instance, when you buy the Xbox Game Pass, you get Xbox Live Gold for as long as you keep that pass, which that's a $60 value right there. So even if that costs a little bit more, that's something people would be looking into, right? So especially now that PlayStation does theirs the same way, even though they used to be free. So maybe that's something to consider. I think especially microtransactions are going to be a big consideration with how that changes too, possibly, because I don't have the numbers, and I wish I had this information in front of me. I know the Gymquisition goes over this all the time.
Just make up a statistic. Nobody will know.
So
I'm kidding.
$2 gazillion every year. And gosh, I forget. I'm pretty sure it's in the millions. Or a certain percentage of like EA's profits, for example, that they were making off microtransactions. A huge amount off of those. And it may get to the point where, they kind of give up where here's the money you're going to save, not having to manufacture physical copies. Here's the subscription service. And if you integrate, even if it's just cosmetic, microtransactions into those games, if that's what's pretty much making the money, that could also be a huge incentive for changing over to that model. Because if that's the way they're going to make money, then why not have that clean distribution process, right?
You know what? I
No
think
more
that's
used games, like you said too.
yeah, I think that's a really good insight that you add there. And I guess to kind of add to that, first I want to give a shout out to the Retro Sports Gamer who says DashV eats McDonald's and stays slender. Simply unheard of. What a legend. I am a legend in my own mind. So I do actually work out. You can't really tell. I'm not going to claim to be buff or anything. There's a reason I wear a jacket and hide my arms, but yeah, it's not. It's mostly I don't have to maintain it, but it's still like I'll start to get a bit of a belly if I just pound McDonald's like every day. So I still there's no magic, there's no shortcut. I go for walks, I lift weights, that kind of thing. So he also says, LOL, slamming a burger on the show. Hey, you know what, man? When you're hungry, desperate times, you know, ba-da-ba-da-ba. Right? Get us 1,000 subs and you don't have to hear me sing the McDonald's jingle anymore.
Patreon perks.
I know, right? I know. So no, to add to your thing about the digital model and if they integrate microtransactions, one of the things I think would be an interesting shift is if you have Games Pass as a subscription, and I think I 100% agree with you. Like if Microsoft decided to mix Game Pass with Xbox Gold, that would be awesome. I think that would be really great. In fact, it was something I was hoping. As much as I'm not interested in playing PlayStation Now and streaming my games because of the lag and latency and everything, I'm just not convinced that that's a good that's a good idea. I have a TV already that's got like 15 to 20 milliseconds display lag, and then you're going to add another like even if you only add another 10 milliseconds in there, it all starts to add up.
Yeah.
So, but that said, I'd be willing to forgive it more if it was part of my PlayStation Plus subscription. Right. So, you know, I ultimately see one of these folks merging those two models. And if they do, I see the other following shortly after. Also worth mentioning that EA has their own kind of Game Pass thing that you can get for EA games on the Xbox platform. So there's more than just the Microsoft subscription service. There's a couple different subscription services. So Microsoft is open to kind of competing, and I'm sure they get probably a revenue share or something with EA. But what'll be interesting is so I'm renting, like, let's say I get Xbox Game Pass for like the next 6 months, and I download Crackdown 3 and a handful of other games, and I play them and everything. And then this really great game, like, you know, Alan Wake 2 or something like that, or, you know, Burnout, you know, Paradise Remastered or whatever comes out on it. I'm likely to go ahead and keep my subscription because I want to get that game, right? Now, let's say in the course of having that game, there's a whole bunch of DLC that comes out and I want to get it and it's cheap. So I grab the DLC, but now, like, it's not magic, right? Like, I'm renting the game, but I own the DLC is the way the current model works, right? It'll be interesting to see if they fold that in, right? Is there maybe like Xbox Game Pass Now and then maybe Xbox Game Pass Premium, where you get all the DLC like automatically, and it's just like an extra $5 to $10, kind of like the difference between Netflix, right, in 4K and regular Netflix streaming versus Netflix discs in the mail. They still have that kind of multi-tier thing where you can pay the different amount depending on the kind of service that you want and whether you want the physical or the streaming distribution or some mix. So I could see different ways, as you pointed out, for Microsoft to monetize this. I could see implications that it could have on the Sony PlayStation landscape. Some of those being positive. You know, if you know, I have my PlayStation Pro subscription, or my PlayStation Plus subscription, not so much for the free games, because as soon as you end your subscription, you lose all the games. But I have it mainly because I want to be able to have cloud saves that are independent of my console. So, but that said, as they continue to hike the prices and all that other stuff, it starts to become less and less. It starts to make a lot less sense for me to have it for the sake of
Mhm,
getting a bunch of free games that I'm not really interested in playing or
mhm.
already have. Because by the time they hit PlayStation Plus, right, they're pretty much only putting out things that you already have at that point.
Yeah, and
Um,
that's one of the weak things too about PlayStation Plus compared to Microsoft Gold. Like they had a $1 special for a month, of course. I really wish they changed things about. I feel like it's kind of a predatory practice with their auto renewal because it's kind of bullshitty.
yeah.
The way you have to go through to change your settings, but you actually get to keep those gold games that you download, even if your subscription goes up. Which I mean, I've already gotten like 6 or 7 games that I don't even own.
The only exception to that, and I want to make sure that folks, I'm chipmunking it, folks. The only exception to the download and you get to keep them is if you're using one of the free trials. Games that you
Yeah,
download during a free trial. If you just get the free trial to download the game and then you don't renew, you will lose those games. So I want to make sure that's clear. But if you have it for a month or more where you paid full price, you're going to be able to keep those games, which is different from PlayStation Plus, which is as soon as it expires,
right.
all your games go invalid. Now I can testify, brother. I can testify that if you miss a payment and they deactivate you, if you renew your PlayStation Plus subscription, that's enough to reactivate the old games.
Mhm.
So you don't like it's not like you miss a month and you're like, oh my god, I just lost 3 years worth of PlayStation Plus.
Right.
No, 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 no. They will become inactive. You won't be able to use them. But then if you go ahead and renew all those games come back. So I'm gonna chew the rest of my food while you give them some more insights, and then I'll add a bit more.
Okay, I'll go on another tangent again here. So, um, going off that, just maybe kind of a few observations to maybe how that would possibly change things like launch day perks, which I guess we would kind of see disappear. I imagine that would be replaced by something else. I'm not immediately sure what that would be. Though, again, since most of your model would be a subscription based thing, I don't think that'd be too big of a deal. Um, One other thing that I did find funny though is that I would expect if we were doing a gaming service kind of thing that actually Steam would be one of the sort of marketplaces to kind of start trying a thing like that. And one of the things I find funny is that Microsoft and PlayStation are actually the ones who are kind of setting the trend as far as those digital services and subscription services, which you would think PC, because I mean literally pretty much every game now for PC it's digital, so you don't really have a problem buying physical stuff for that because it's not something people really want that much. You would think they would be trying that more because that would be a very viable thing. It's not like you're running into people now where they want the retro games and stuff. Um, but for whatever reason, that's not something we're really seeing on there, which I'm not sure what the reason would be for that.
Yeah.
Um, Other than that, the only other kind of things I was thinking about, I guess that as our consoles are moving more towards like a PC mentality to them, that subscription model might become a little more viable because then rather than um, buying the games and everything else, when you do the subscription service, they might kind of do like the PS Vita where it's like, here's our special memory unit. This costs a lot. So you have to
Mhm.
kind of pay a premium price for the memories, and storage is going to be an issue if you want to have a bunch of games available at one time if you were
Yeah.
doing like local storage. I don't know. But I don't know. I'd be curious to see how quickly we might see something like that integrated because we do have the subscription services now, but people
Mhm.
still have a tie to physical games. I'm not sure if this is something where it's going to be more like, 20, 30 years down the road before we'd get to something. Honestly, I think it'd be sooner than that, but
Yeah.
I don't know.
I'm gonna let you get your throat back there. You sound a little
Get
bit
some
hoarse, my
water.
friend. Hopefully, you have some water. There you go. So, I'm going to respond to a couple of your points. I'm going to go back to an earlier one. I kind of went off on a tangent and didn't jump back onto one of the comments I wanted to make regarding the microtransactions on, on a rented game, right? Like, so maybe so one mode we talked about. Okay, maybe they have like Xbox Game Pass Standard, where you just get the game, no DLC, Xbox Game Pass Deluxe, where you get the game plus any DLCs that come out or whatever, and again,
Oh
all in
yeah.
rental, all in like a rental fashion. But I'm wondering
Yeah.
if you do a whole, okay, I'm renting, I have an Xbox Game Pass Standard, and then I just opt into like, oh, I want to play, I want to have the extra content in, Before the Storm, right? Life is Strange. Um, I could see it being a situation where, like, okay, so I go to the Microsoft Store and I buy the DLC. So I own the DLC, but I've rented the content. Then, let's say a year from now or whatever, Microsoft says, hey, Life is Strange Before the Storm is going to exit this program, blah, blah, blah. Play it now while you can. Well, crap, I have DLC on that. I could see that actually driving, right, either a digital or a physical purchase of the game, right? I have the DLC. I enjoyed the game. I would like to go back to it now that it's gone, because I have actually done this, not for that reason specifically, but I have done this with PlayStation Plus. Like now and then there have been games where it was like Resident Evil 5 Gold Edition. And I'm like, really? Like, because I'd skipped Resident Evil 5 when it first came out because I'd played Resident Evil 4 on the Wii and the controls were so amazing I couldn't
Yeah.
go back to non-motion controls in a Resident Evil game. It was just so groundbreaking. And so when I heard that Gold Edition had, right, supported the controllers, that made me interested in it, but not interested enough to buy the game and the controllers to see if it was any good. The game ended up being on PlayStation Plus 1 month while I had a subscription, so I went ahead and downloaded it. A local game store that I was at, people were just selling their PlayStation moves because, right, PlayStation 4 had just come out, and people were all thinking that, like, their moves were going to be useless. They weren't thinking like VR was going to bring them back or anything.
Mm.
So I picked up like the motion controllers and the camera for a song, and downloaded Resident Evil 5 Gold Edition. I was like, wow, this game is friggin' amazing. And, I didn't want to, if I ever lapsed my subscription, I didn't want to lose access to the game. So I ended up, I'd gone on to beat the game and unlocked all the different modes. And my son and I actually played it co-op and really enjoyed just the whole run.
Mm.
And so I was like, I really want to make sure I can play some form of this game again in the future. So I found it at a used shop, and ended up buying it for $20. Um, Interesting trivia. I showed it on a show a long time ago. I don't have it on hand to show right now, but um, the version that I got actually turned out to be the special edition with like the making of video and all that other stuff, and the instruction manual and everything. So, and the steel book.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, in fact, what had happened is somebody took the retail version and the steelbook and made their own like special edition out of it, because the steelbook and the making of video and the instruction manual was for Resident Evil 5, but the disc that they had inside it was Resident Evil 5 Gold Edition. So
Hey.
I got the best of both worlds, right? Like I got the makeshift, because the Gold Edition didn't have a manual, didn't have all the other stuff, and didn't have this extra disc. So I got like a make your own, do it yourself, Gold Edition steelbook thing. So the Retro Sports Gamer says, I can't believe Dash is going digital. I thought he had standards. Think about what this means. T. Pugmire's CDI collection is going to be worth thousands someday. So I think I want to clarify, RSG, if I can call you that. Can I call you RSG? I'm going to call him RSG before he can reply in the chat. Don't call me that. No, seriously though, I think, yes, is my stance changing on digital? Yes. But across the board, no. My stance in digital for this generation is changing because, and I mentioned this on a couple of shows now, like really for Xbox One and for PlayStation 4 and even for Switch now, it's starting to become really pointless to chase after the physical media. Like I have to accept that if I'm going to play the game is not going to be complete on disc or on cartridge, no matter which system I get it for. So now at that point, if I'm just thinking I just want to be able to play the game and I'm going to live with the fact that it's maybe, a fire and forget experience in the long run, really, what's the cheapest, most convenient way to get it? Do I want to go to a GameStop and wait in line for 20 minutes and, all this other stuff? And, I mean, if there's no difference, right? If it's literally I pop in the disc and I wait 3 hours for it to download off the disc versus I buy it in the store and I wait 3 hours for it to download from the store, and then there's a whole bunch of patches on top of that. What is the difference? There really isn't at that point. If I find like older systems, absolutely, right? And certainly if it's a game where it's complete, like Horizon Zero Dawn, right? Complete edition for the PlayStation 4, I definitely grab myself a copy of that. So I am still a fan of physical. I do still prefer physical and want physical, but my openness to digital is really coming from the fact that at the end of the day, I'm a gamer. And unfortunately, all three big players right now aren't really giving me much of a choice. Either I want to enjoy the current generation of gaming, as transient and short lived of an experience as it may be on the grand time scale, or I want to miss out on all that content. And I think what's happening is a bit of self discovery as well. Like for certain games, I don't want to miss out on the content. I would rather, like Life is Strange Before the Storm, I would rather experience it once and maybe talk about it on the show and capture that than never experience it. And so far, I'm about halfway through the game. I just started episode 2. I don't regret that decision. So it does certainly change how much I'm willing to pay. Like I very rarely, if ever, buy digital content brand new. I'm not going to pay $50 for a digital game. I'll pay $20 for a digital game. I'll pay $10 for a digital game. Microsoft was having a ton of sales over Christmas, and I picked up something like, I think I mentioned before. Now I'm up to like 92 games on my Xbox One X, and
Yeah.
I think like 50 of those I bought during the December January timeframe,
Oh my
and I did not spend over $100.
Holy
I
cow!
didn't
Wow.
spend over $100. That's like, why the hell wouldn't I? Right? Why wouldn't I buy a digital copy of DuckTales Remastered on the Xbox One? I already have it on the PlayStation 3, but that's not plugged in anymore, and it doesn't work on the PlayStation 4, right? And I'm not going to play. It's not the kind of game you can play on PlayStation Now with lag. So yeah,
Yeah.
for $3, I bought it again digital. Absolutely, why not?
Yeah.
So yeah, and I think to so hopefully, does that make sense, Retro Sports Gamer? Does that? Hopefully he's still on board and showing us. Hopefully
Hopefully
I
you
didn't
didn't
send him
fall asleep.
away when I called him the RSG. But there was another point, I guess, that you had made about the Kyle.
Yeah.
Another point. I'm jumping all over the place today.
Oh no, you're good.
There's another point that you had made about the digital games and about the microtransactions. Um,
Launch day content.
yeah, that's great that you remember that, because I was like drawing a blank. I'm like, I hope he could pull it out of the ether because I
No,
had a
I
really
I
good
have been
zinger.
writing it down actually.
No, you got to do that, right? I'm just a stream of ba da ba 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 stream of consciousness. So, no, I think actually we might see, and this will be good and bad potentially. I think that we'll see maybe more launch day stuff. Like I could see, especially for Microsoft games. Maybe other publishers don't do this because they maybe don't want to fragment their market, but I could see Microsoft Studios making initiatives. If ultimately they want people to go digital and get digital, I could see them saying, "Hey, if you're on Games Pass, guess what? Not only is this free, but for the first month, you get this exclusive DLC pass."
Well, and like you were saying with the tiers, maybe different tiers get different kind of like day one content things. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I could see them, and I could even see them teasing people to go to the
Go to the
premium
higher
tier, right?
tier.
Because you could say,
Yeah.
like, oh, guess what? First month, you get the game plus its DLC. If you have the
Mm.
standard package. After that, you just get the game. And if you want the DLC, you can either purchase the DLC, or you can, right, upgrade to Xbox Game Pass Premium and get the DLC.
Now, if I can,
So
you got to thought finish it, but I got a question going off that when you're ready.
right. So that was my main, I guess my main takeaway in that when I heard it is that we might actually see more, not more, but we might see new forms of exclusives of, play this on Game Pass and get, maybe you have an exclusive DLC to Game Pass itself,
Mm.
right? That kind of entices you to kind of come over, over to the dark side. Because nothing's better than selling you a game twice, right?
Get this
So
exclusive Overwatch Game Pass skin. Ooh.
right. So you already own Overwatch, but now and I guess it all gets around to like incentivizing, right? Like if it's a, hey, I have this game, but I don't have the DLC for that game, and the DLC for that game would be really expensive. But if I get Xbox Game Pass Premium, even though I already have that game, I get all these other games too, plus DLC for this game that I already have. Right. So I could see them doing a bunch of cross pollination things like that. And depending on how you feel about digital and how you feel about rent versus buy, if you're somebody that buys a lot of games, and doesn't sell them, but then doesn't plan to really play them again in the future, you're just you don't want to go to GameStop and sell it or whatnot. I could see somebody saving a lot of money if they're comfortable just getting it, playing it, once, and then if it's not available later, big deal. I know a lot of people that are like that actually. If you're somebody that is used to buying and selling back at GameStop, I don't know, run the numbers. It might still be cheaper to just go ahead and get a Game Pass and not bother leaving the house.
Yeah. So okay. So if you have any more thoughts on that, go ahead, because I got two questions
No, I'm good.
for you. Okay. So I think two big things to keep in mind. I just thought of this and I was like, ooh. So for people following news for games like Call of Duty, for example, I mean, they are patenting these systems now where with the multiplayer, basically it's a matchmaking system that's optimized to sell people DLC. And I think we discussed that before, and like Jimquisition has a good thing, but basically after you buy DLC, it may put you with certain people so you perform well, and then it justifies the DLC. Or maybe if they're trying to sell a certain DLC, they'll put you with someone that has it, and then all this other stuff, right? So the big thing, and not necessarily with microtransactions, but the big thing is that they are trying to increase the longevity of primarily like online multiplayer community interaction. So trying to keep people playing those games as long and consistently as they can. So one question, how would this digital distribution model, especially if we do start including DLC, I mean, that's season pass, it's already a thing. It's pretty much here for good unless people actually stop buying stuff, and they're not going to. Would that potentially increase that player engagement and stuff, where that would actually be a model that would be helping them to keep people coming back to games and all that, and be good for them in that sense? But the other big thing, how would a purely or mostly digital distribution model affect how I guess it'd be like developers or publishers or whoever, how do they determine what kind of a cut that they get for that? Would they say, we're going to give you X number of downloads times this much money, that's what you get, plus like every month that people are playing at certain levels, they get incentive. Again, tying back into keeping people playing. Because for better or worse, I guess, this kind of model might allow publishers and developers, even though this might be very bad for us, to kind of say, okay, we're going to keep releasing content for these games as long as basically it pays us to do so. For better or worse, that might kind of help, I guess. So those are two other big questions about how this kind of model would affect that.
Yeah. And those are questions directly to me?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, anybody in the chat, feel free to kind of throw down your questions and your thoughts here. If you're watching this post show, feel free to put your questions or comments or thoughts down in the doodly doo. So I guess I'll answer the second question first, and then I might need a refresher on what the first question was. But for the second question though, you asked like how do I see, how would game makers get compensated and the cut and all that other stuff? And frankly, Microsoft might have like a particular like boilerplate template that they try to establish, but I think largely it will be based, it'll probably be taken either on a publisher by publisher basis or on a title by title basis, or maybe even a hybrid of that. I don't think Microsoft is going to be able to get away with saying like, oh, we're going to offer, X amount of dollars for this digital title and Y amount of dollars for this digital title. Maybe they can. Maybe they can do like what Apple did and iTunesify it and say, this is what we're going to pay. But one of the reasons that I think that won't happen is for something that you pointed out, which makes a lot of sense, which is not all titles are going to have equal draw, right? I don't think Mega Man Legends, right, as much as I'm having, or I'm sorry, Mega Man Legacy Collection. I don't think Mega Man Legacy Collection, as much as I enjoy that title, I don't think that that's drawing the same numbers that State of Decay or Crackdown 3 are going to draw, frankly, right? Or a Gears of War 5. And so I don't think that and I think that there's a certain, Microsoft's dealings with its own studios is probably gonna be different than its dealings with other studios, right? And whether that means, favored more or favored less, like they could actually be favored less, right? They could in some ways bear the brunt of the whole, like, oh, we can't show favoritism, so they actually show anti-favoritism. And they end up like not punishing them, but they don't, we have to not give you as big a cut or whatever because we can't be perceived as being preferential or whatever. Or it could be the other way of just like, hey, money from Microsoft to Microsoft. Like I don't know what I don't know what the mix would be, but I do think that there'd be some fluidity in there. I think there's another question in there. There's a third question I think that you're kind of maybe alluding to or on the cusp of. But I'm going to go ahead and bring that one up and answer that, which is, are games going to be more about advertising and positioning product to users as we continue to march forward, right? I think that was in there somewhere.
Well, I was just when you were talking, you made me think, and I was like, the Steam front page access were basically, and they've talked about basically if you want your game to really get the downloads, you need to get on that front page. So that could also be another way that they're saying, hey, you want your game on the front page?
Yeah,
you're gonna have to shell out money.
And so I think what's happening, you made a really good point earlier about Steam and about like where the hell is Steam in this renting business. And I think Steam is in a difficult spot, mainly because I think Steam is kind of this platform where like publishers try to get their games sold on the platform. And so it's like a bunch of people come to Steam and Steam like approves or whatever. I think that's a very I don't want to, well, in some ways it's not really too different of a model. I mean, you don't have like every Joe making Xbox One games. That's not happening. They're still going through some Microsoft approval process and things like that. But I guess what I'm getting at is like, I think probably the rights model for what Microsoft can and can't do and how they can or can't present the games is probably built into some of the publisher contracts. I think Microsoft would negotiate probably with EA or with Ubisoft and say like, hey, look, if we have your games on our platform going forward, we really want to make sure that the following games or the following franchises are going to be available as part of our, our Game Pass service as a service to our customers. And we're willing to negotiate about what the rev share needs to be on that to make that happen, because you'd be if you could do a Game Pass subscription that included every friggin' Madden game, like automatically just every year it was the new Madden game, sports gamers would like buy that stuff immediately.
Yeah.
Like, it kind of
you gotta have the new Madden.
Right. You gotta have the new Madden, you gotta have the new FIFA, you gotta have the new, right, all this stuff. Like, I mean, if you're a fan of all those, right, then two like a 1 year pass paid for all your EA sports games.
Passes by genre.
Or so now now that said, I think what's gonna be interesting is the question that you asked, about like what does this mean for the gamers. I don't really know. I think as they cut their teeth on it, I think it's going to be jarring, I guess. There's been experimentation in this space before. Certainly Burnout Paradise, when it came out for the PlayStation 3 and the Xbox. Do you remember the Obama billboards? Right?
No.
It used to be like there were billboards in Paradise City that as you drove around had advertisements on them. And those advertisements were real legit, no kidding ads.
Oh, Yeah, now I remember hearing
And
something about
during
that.
the
Yeah.
election, they were doing Obama, right? You know,
Oh wow.
Obama ads and stuff like that.
And you
So
had mentioned I was trying to think what the topic would have been, but you mentioned talking about this before about integrating those ads into games more often.
yeah, I
Or
think
loading
you're gonna
screens and stuff.
see. I think you're gonna see experimentation with that. I think you're gonna continued experimentation with that. I think that they have to be more careful with it. Here's the main problem, right? If you look at where television and where online streaming is making most of its money, right? Where what did we talk about last week that people were all up in arms about? Ad revenue.
Ad revenue.
Right, exactly. And so we've gone from this really weird world, and I guess this is the part of the show where I just go totally off of gaming.
Oh no, keep going. I'll bring it back.
All right. So, we've gotten into this weird world where, like, if we were having this conversation 2 to 4 years ago, we'd all be complaining about the fact that YouTube has ads at all. Now people are complaining that YouTube is not going to put ads on their video and pay them for it. Like it's completely like topsy turvy land. And I'm not saying that the people complaining, right, don't have a valid beef and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
So I mean, I have my own opinions on it, which I shared on the show last week. It's not really a big deal to me. It doesn't bother me. They can have my 2 cents. That's all I was making, if that. But I get that for some people, it's a bigger impact, it's a bigger sacrifice, and it makes it harder for them to kind of get started. So I get that. But I think what's easy about streaming and what's easy about television and things like that is that folks are used to breaks in the action for some kind of commercial activity, and we've kind of become used to every video starting with a quick 5-second ad, and maybe I can skip it, maybe I can't.
Yeah.
What's really we're not used to, and this is difficult for them to monetize the gaming in the same way that you can video streaming or television watching. If you interrupt our gaming experience, you break the experience. It's not like film yet, where like you watch a TV show, like and this becomes immediately clear on Netflix, right? Like if you're watching a show on Netflix or Amazon that was like a television show, and it gets to that really tense moment, and then the fade out, and then the immediate fade in, and we're picking back up. The lack of the commercial is actually jarring now because there's this big buildup, and they're expecting, oh, they're going to leave you in suspense. So you go to the restroom or whatever, whether you're watching the commercial or not. Part
Right.
of the experience is, oh, what's going to happen, right? Like I know that, like when my wife and I used to watch shows on regular television, before Roku TV and things like that had us get rid of cable. We'd be like, yeah, there'd be commercials going on and be like, oh my goodness. So do you think we're gonna finally find out how Locke, lost the use of his legs? Is this gonna be the episode? Is this where it happens? Like, oh my goodness, are we gonna actually find out what the hell's going on this island? We'd have these dialogues and these talks, and that was part of the experience. And if you go through and you just kind of shotgun your way through them, some of those feel kind of broken without the commercials. It sounds weird, but it was part of the experience. Games aren't like that. And I think ultimately the goal is going to be to figure out, I think some of the, not necessarily, certainly not me as a game player, right? And certainly not all studios, but I think the studios that are maybe owned by publishers, right? The studios that are looking at not necessarily doing games as like a passion project and it's something they love and all that stuff, but folks that are looking at making games for the sake of exclusively generating revenue. I think they're going to be continuing to push the envelope and see, like, how can we introduce ads and advertising and things like this? How can we inject these things into the experience without breaking the experience? And just like 3D movies, just like advertising, on the web, on web pages, right? Like, can I put a banner all over and fill every square inch of your screen with banners? Before, no, you get a pop-up blocker, right? Oh, can I just show a quick 5-second clip before a video? Okay, people don't seem to care about that. So I think there's gonna be some experimentation that happens, and we are gonna get some games that are kind of weird, broken, odd experiences where we kind of feel like, what the hell? Like I start to enjoy the game, and then I feel like my eyes are getting raped. Like, what's happening? Like, why did you do this to this game? Because I have to be honest, and this has nothing to do with politics, I promise, but it was weird as hell for me to be playing road rage mode in Burnout and seeing like hope and change posters with Obama, like, motion blurring, across the city skyline. And I'm just like, the reason that it was jarring to me was because I enter the game world as partly as a way to escape reality and a way to enjoy another reality. And so what was jarring for me was leaving my reality to try to enjoy a game, to have, in this case, something like politics be immediately reintroduced into my reality. It's like the last thing I want to be thinking about is who the hell I'm going to vote for while I'm playing Burnout Paradise. I just want to drive around and crash stuff. That's it. So like, now maybe if it was like a Pennzoil type thing or whatever, and so there's experimentation that they have to do with how do they place it, how do they put it in, how do things get monetized, what's the split that they do with different folks to monetize it. There's all that stuff that they need to figure out. But then I also think they have to think about, well, what am I targeting, right? Do I need to have, right? And again, it's not about politics. I would have felt just as weird if it was Trump or if it was Hillary or if it was, Mr. Rogers, right, in a sweater. Like any one of those, it would have been like, wait a minute, why is this in my Burnout game? Right? But if it's like a Pennzoil thing, or if there's like a BMW, right, commercial or something in there, like that I could at least buy. It's at least within the same realm, within the same universe. It's kind of relevant to the content.
AdSense.
Yeah, and I honestly, like, I think some games are going to be better suited to this model than others. Like I really feel like the Need for Speed series, where off and on they'll have licensed cars and everything. I gotta tell you, the whole reason I got Need for Speed Hot Pursuit is because that's probably the only way I'm ever gonna find myself behind the wheel of a Tesla. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, I just had to, and the car drives and handles amazing in that game. It was just so fun. So I wouldn't have minded, not necessarily like commercials about it, but I wouldn't have minded, Tesla having some kind of like, hey, look, rather than you kind of gen something up that's like generic, we're going to give you a really sexy hook for this car. Like when people select a car, we're going to have Elon Musk standing there going like, the Tesla, like something like that, right? Like have some spokesperson for BMW or something up talking about it. It'd be no stranger to us than having John Madden being the announcer in the football games, right? So
Hey, watch a couple ads, earn some points, and you get a free loot box.
you know what? I could see them going that way with a game like, Battlefront or whatever, especially because what would be amazing is like you're dead, you're waiting for the, different modes of the game, right? Different modes of the game. Sometimes you can respawn instantly, right? Sometimes you have to wait a while or whatever. But for the ones where you have to wait a while, I could see them going like they're waiting anyway, like show them an ad. Right? like let them toggle on, hey, I'll watch ads while I'm waiting for the next match if you give me some DLC or some loot boxes. I could totally see them doing that. Do I want them to do that? No. I want them. I want everybody to make multiplayer games where me dying doesn't mean I have to wait 20 minutes until I can do something else. And spectating and watching other people have fun playing the game is not the something else I want to be doing either. So that's like the ultimate bullshit cheat. Oh, they got something to do. They can just run around and watch other people. That's why I turn on my console. Right?
Are we turning into the Orwell of gaming here all of a sudden with our dystopian gaming future?
Yeah, I don't know. Like but that's where I see it going. I see more efforts, and Nintendo, right? Nintendo did this, right? The only reason that there's probably multiple reasons, but a big reason that they did Super Mario Run was not to prove whether or not, and we found the proof of this in the pudding. They did not make Super Mario Run for the mobile phone to see if it was a viable platform for their games. They did it to see if they could generate more money there than they could on their own dedicated consoles, or if they could generate what they thought was the appropriate amount of money that they should make given the audience.
Yeah.
And so they release Mario Run, they give it to you free. They really, in my opinion, they super overcharged for the actual rest of the game, which is why I didn't buy it. I didn't feel it was worth $10 or $5. Maybe, $1 or $2. That's fine. Impulse buy. But but that was an experience. That was an experiment for them, right? If they could get you to kind of like give you freemium content and then have you pay to play for some upgrades and stuff.
Yeah, and we
So,
did get Animal Crossing now, but I don't know if that has. I assume it has microtransactions, but I have
oh, I
not
haven't
heard
played it. I'll have
anything
to
about
check that
that.
out, and yeah, I'll have to check that out and see. But I think we can expect to see more of that, I guess, as the short version. And I would rather see. I am more okay to retro sports gamers' point. I'm more okay with subscribing to get games, and then maybe that month, maybe I did play them, maybe I didn't, and Microsoft gets the money anyway. But I was paying for the opportunity to be able to sit down at any time and play games from that library. I'm fine with that. I'd rather have that than have like I fire up the game and during the loading screen, I'm seeing advertisements, right? Or during while I'm driving down the street, I'm seeing, I'm in Paradise City, right, doing a burning lap, passing by Huggies commercials, right, on these fake, these fake digital displays or something like that. Like I'm not cool with that. I don't want to see Huggies. I don't want to see political commercials and things like that in my game. I don't want to see a Price Chopper commercial, or a ba 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 get the hell out of here, right? I don't want to see McDonald's, commercials in my
Hey,
you know
special DLC mission. You have to go to McDonald's and get a special order.
oh my goodness. I mean, if they actually put
Get a free skin when
McDonald's,
you complete it.
you know what? I'm fine with if they want to do product placement like movies, right? Like anytime you see Pepsi or Coca-Cola or whatever in a movie, like, dude, that's not in there for like that's not just in there because that was the closest soda that they had, right? Like they got paid by, and there's actually been, if you watch behind the scenes in a bunch of movies, like one of them is Terminator 2. Actually, there's a scene where the scene where he's got the guns in the rose box, right, and he pulls it out and he shoots the T-1000 and he gets all like messed up and everything, and then they're running through the store and he gets thrown and smashed through like this glass case, and then they run out of the store, and there's this during the whole part where they're in the store and he gets thrown through the glass case. There's kind of like this really quick whip pan. Well, in the original cut, that wasn't supposed to be such a jarring like whip pan. What happened was they'd worked out a deal. I think it was with Oakley. They worked out a deal with some Sunglasses Hut or Oakley or
Yeah,
something. Where like, hey,
yeah.
we could do product placement here, and the deal ended up falling through. And so they literally modified the final cut of the film that went to the theater, to not provide that product placement for free because the deal had fallen through.
Damn, we could have
So
had a cool scene of him reaching on that sunglass rack and flipping his sunglasses out and
yeah.
putting them on.
And I think actually,
We missed it.
I think the other reason that they pulled it was because I might have some of this slightly wrong. So they did they did cut that, and they did do it because the placement deal fell through. I want to say that it was because it was a different brand of sunglasses than the sunglasses he's wearing when he gets his face punched. When he
Oh,
gets his face punched, it's Oakley's that he's wearing. And I think the other product placement was and they're clearly Oakley's. But when the other product placement happened, it was product placement for I think Sunglass Hut or something like that.
yeah.
So the one was like, oh hell no, are you going to use our product? And then like now that said, it might have been, I think it was Oakley's. I'm not sure, or it might have
Yeah.
been that like, hey, we didn't know you were going to break our glasses later. So like maybe it was the same one or not, but I don't remember. But there's some issue with the sunglasses in that shot.
Yeah. Well, and there was a similar thing that Star Trek, the original series, had done where I think like Captain Kirk awards someone a medal or he gets one or something, and they basically just put that in there so that they could sell like this collector's edition medal thing to kids or whatever, So that's
Yeah.
nothing new.
Yeah.
Actually, one thing that it came to mind when we were talking about developer or publisher or whatever recompensation, Amazon, their gaming thing they do. I'm trying to think of the name of it. One of the models that they have is that the game will be put on the store for free. People can download it and play it, and then whoever the developer is gets a certain amount of money based on how much playtime people do. So like if you have 10 cents per minute or something and people play 1,000 minutes, then you get the money for that. So um and maybe that's something we'd see, especially because, again, that would reinforce multiplayer longevity, but it could also help single player games too. I mean, we're not going to see single player games go away or anything like that. But
Well, I think what's interesting is for the single player or for the multiplayer games or the single player games, I think a lot of it is going to depend on the integration of microtransactions, right? Like I think, like I don't think a publisher is going to sign up or Microsoft are going to make a deal that says like, hey, if somebody's just using the CPU and RAM on the box for like 5 hours, we're going to give you X amount of dollars. If it's for
right.
10 hours, we're going to give you Y amount. And I don't think that's what you're trying to say. I do agree with you that I think that if there is some kind of correlation between hours spent in the game and likelihood to purchase certain content, I do see that being like a bargaining chip, right? Where they could actually talk and say, hey, look, right, like if you're going to buy, if somebody's in the game for at least 10 hours on average, right, for every user that's in there for 10 hours, they buy 2 loot crates, right? So let's try to keep the engagement up in the 10-hour mark to maximize our loot crates. I could see that. I could see that happening. I think that the biggest challenge really is just how do you, since it's an interactive medium, right? The challenge for them, I think, is how do they monetize that interaction? There's a veiled question in there again. You've been really good with them. I think another question is, we talked, I think it was 2 shows ago, about an article Brian Shea wrote about how single player is not dying, it's evolving.
Yeah.
One of the things that I do, and while his outlook does give me hope, right? And I'm not going to rehash my opinions on it. Folks can go back a couple episodes previous and check it out. And read the article in Game Informer. I think it's 2 months back. It's a really good article. All of Brian's are really good, but this one was especially kind of hit home because I'm a bigger fan of single player than multiplayer. As an adult.
Yeah.
So
Same.
when I had infinite time and didn't have, wife, child, work, type stuff, it was totally fine. But as other things needed to have the ability to interrupt my life, I couldn't really just have open-ended gaming time. And certainly not frequently enough to, I can't compete with most of the online world. So this is basically an admission that I suck at online games and I don't have the time or the patience or the desire to spend the amount of hours required to get good enough to compete. So, but my hats are definitely off, and total respect to those that do that. I don't think that there's anything wrong with somebody investing that amount of time in a game if they're liking what they do. That's totally fine. But I do think that the opportunities to monetize multiplayer games are a lot more than the opportunities to monetize single player experiences. And I am concerned about what that means for, I am concerned about what that means for gaming in general. Like if you're a publisher that's looking to maximize your profits, you're going to lean more heavily toward the things that can scale the most. So I do think that there is going to have to be, to Brian Shea's point, it's not a question of will single player evolve. I think it's more of a single player has to evolve. It has no choice other than to evolve, because if it doesn't, it will not survive, because it won't be a profitable, viable platform for the publisher, right? Publisher will say, I can release a single player game and get X amount of dollars, or I can, do this multiplayer game and get, 10 times more.
Yeah. Well,
So,
and I mean, with the presence of like basically the indie markets, though, that is kind of a good thing, that I think those can help to keep maybe some of this in check a little bit. Maybe.
Yes and no. I mean, yes, in the sense of, I think you'll always have those folks that are passionate and want to do it for the love of doing it and all that other stuff. At the end of the day, even those indie studios a lot of times the goal of an indie studio starts, I think, to make a great game. But once you start getting into the whole, like, how do we keep the lights on mode, right? How do we keep people employed? How do we ensure that we can make a sequel? And we saw this, this is definitely not an indie maker by any means, right? We saw this with Crystal Dynamics with, Rise of the Tomb Raider. I think a lot of us, I know I certainly was blown the hell away to find out it was going to be an Xbox One X or Xbox One timed exclusive. I was absolutely floored. Like I could not. I was one of the folks that was kind of like, "Are you trying to kick me in the nuts right now?" Because what the hell? Now that said, right, there has been enough on the Xbox One X platform. I've become a big fan of the Xbox One X over the last year. There's a lot of stuff that I really feel that they've done right, and I've talked about that at length, so I'm not going to get into that here. But if a company like Crystal Dynamics with blockbusters like Tomb Raider, right, feels the need to kind of hitch their wagon to Microsoft in order to be able to finish up right what they have in mind for the game, I honestly don't know how long indie developers can kind of on smoke, magic, and dreams, really compete. I do think you will have ones that kind of come in and shine through, but I don't know that you'll have, armies and armies of them. And I guess my concern would be, you could see the same thing maybe from indie companies. Like there's going to be folks that are going to be like, hey, I want to make a game that's going to be amazing. And it's kind of inspired by Zelda or inspired by Shantae or whatever. So you'll see games like Oceanhorn, right, come out. But I think for every Oceanhorn that you see, you're going to also see, other games, right? Like, what is it? League of Legends.
Yeah.
Right. So, and I'm not saying, that folks wanting to come in and make games and make money for making games is a bad thing, but I don't want to see those League of Legend games. I want to see the Oceanhorn games. Right? Like personally. But that said, I'm clearly not, if they targeted my demographic, they would probably go broke.
Yeah. Well, and
So,
I mean, there things like Patreon or whatever. I mean, those are growing though too, where I mean, they do have to have some of their own funding, but it's getting to that point where people can say this is something we want, and then if enough people, kind of go in it together, then they can have that budget to do their stuff. Though, as you mentioned, there's still problems with it.
I do think you're
especially
right.
if we do go to this digital model, that's going to change things quite a bit. So,
Yeah. I think, and I think you bring up a good point. I do think digital model does have some advantages that it was one of those we were kind of promised that this would happen, but we didn't really know how to take it. So my attitude toward digital in this generation has changed for this reason as well. Like this is one of the few situations where the promise actually came true. Microsoft and Sony and stuff had talked about how, digital only was going to open up releases by a lot more studios that couldn't really get publishers. And we've 100% seen that. I think, if you look at the digital library for the Wii U even, and for the Switch, it's huge. It's huge in comparison to their physical library. And if you look at the Sony, PlayStation, and the Xbox libraries, again, huge, just absolutely huge. So, and a lot of that being padded out with indie titles, or if not indie titles, titles that never would have been viable at retail. Like I love the Shantae games. They just don't make money at retail. That's just the reality. Not compared to, other games. Ori and the Blind Forest, same thing. It's probably one of the best damn Metroidvania games made in the last 5 years. No, I'll refactor my statement. It is the best Metroidvania game made in the last 5 years. I'm saying that. Like Metroid Samus Returns was a huge disappointment after having played Ori and the Blind Forest. So I'm really looking forward to Will o' the Wisps.
shots fired.
Yeah, shots fired. But that said, oh, and by the way, I'm not going to get like a takedown notice and a finding from a group that I already have an agreement with to stream their stuff if I stream more in the Blind Forest. So just saying that,
Just saying.
yeah, Nintendo might
Just
want to
putting that out
reevaluate.
there.
Just putting that out there for certain companies we won't name called Nintendo. But so yeah, I think that the that promise was met, I guess is what I'm getting at. We're promised that this would bring more games to the forefront, and more good games. And although there has been an increase in shovelware, I think there's also been an
Oh
increase
yeah.
in some really good. There's been some really amazing games that have kind of come out that maybe we wouldn't have otherwise seen.
Hmm.
So I think that that's worth it. Again, I'd rather play Ori and the Blind Forest once and than not ever have the opportunity to play it.
Yeah.
So
Well, and that's a big thing too, and I just didn't get around to mentioning it, but how that would affect like the gate to access to games. I mean, especially because those games, I'll wait till it goes down to $20 or something like that. How would these subscription services access how many people are accessing the games, and when they're accessing them, it just, I mean, potentially huge change.
oh yeah. Oh yeah. I think if they can get the pricing right, I think that would be good. Something that I don't remember if I mentioned this already, but it was a thought that I had when we were talking about the different tiers and everything. I mean, it's entirely possible that Microsoft could work out deals where they could have like a Xbox Game Pass free tier or trial tier or something like that. Like I know that they do like okay, get a month free or whatever, but that's kind of like a gimmicky type thing. I could see them. People love free and permanent, right? So, and I don't mean that you have the game permanently, but I could see Xbox having this mode where like, hey, if you just want to dip your toe in the water of Game Pass and get a feel for what it really is, but you still don't want to like pay a subscription, okay, here's the deal. Are you willing to are you willing to sit through some commercials? Right? Are you willing to play games that are built for monetization and all that other stuff? And because they kind of already do this with all the free to play stuff, right? Let's not kid ourselves, right? All these games that are free to play. Honestly, I appreciate that when I'm scrolling through the Xbox store there, they have free and they have free to play as separate categories because I know what friggin' category I just want to flat out skip. Like it's just like a no-brainer. Like, oh, okay. Like my son's like, oh, but it's got Marvel characters or oh, it's got DC characters. I'm like, son, the only reason that game exists is to bring you in and convince you to spend money.
Get those microtransactions.
Exactly. So like I'm not gonna come home to find out that we spent like, 800 real dollars on digital t-shirts. Like that is not
But
I mean
Dad,
PlayStation Home, right? Remember
Dad,
PlayStation Home?
yeah, barely. I don't think I've
Like
ever even used it.
I used it once just to check it out. I'm like, wow, this is like, and I didn't even think it was possible. This is like a worse version of Second Life. Oh man, what a worthless. I'm sorry. I gotta not be so passionate. I just didn't find any like a friend of mine was trying to get me into Second Life, and I'm like, so what do I do? And so he's like, no, come in, I'll show you around, right? So I go in, and we're like in this level that like looks like hell or something, and he's like, come on over here, and I'm like, okay, where are we going? He's like, we're going to this casino, right? And I'm like, okay, so we go to this casino, and he's like, look at all these games that you can play and everything. I'm like, I don't have any money, and he goes, go stand over there, go stand on this circle thing. I'm like, what the hell am I doing? He's like, this is a dance pad, like if you just like leave your computer on all night and leave your person dancing there, you'll get like virtual game currency, and then you can come in and play the slot machines in the daytime. And I'm like, okay, what if I don't want to play the slot machines? Is there like anything else I can do? Oh, you can build whatever you want because it was kind of like Minecraft, right? Like you can build a this or that or whatever. I'm like, okay, well, how do I do that? And he goes, oh, well, you go here and you buy this thing and you buy this thing. Well, how much dancing do I have to do to buy that? And he goes, oh, you don't have to dance. Like he goes, you can get jobs, like you can go find. And I'm like, so you're basically telling me that this literally is like
This is
everything that I see about life that I want to avoid when I play a video game, like made virtual. And he goes, well, when you say it like that, it kind of sounds like it sucks. And I'm like, I'm just
saying.
I'm
Just
sorry, I have
making an
no.
observation.
Yeah, I'm like, I have no interest in this. I have no interest. So then I get the PlayStation. I'm like, what the hell's PlayStation Home, right? And so I fire it up and I go, oh god, it's Second Life, right? Like it's Second Life. Only the levels are from like Resident Evil or Final Fantasy VII. I mean, that was kind of mildly entertaining. Like, oh okay, like I'm walking around, one of the levels from Resident Evil, and then there's all these people there, right? And they're all like just having random discussions, like LOL, my brother, right? That kind of thing. And I'm like, I don't really, I don't know. I just didn't see the allure of it. But then I go to the
Yeah.
store because they have shops, right? And it's like, oh, I can get a gift. I can get a different T-shirt for my character. That's kind of cool. Like, wait a minute, $10 real,
No.
10 actual real dollars.
No.
I'm like, that's for basically a texture map on my character. Like, yep, I'm out of here. I have zero interest in this. Right. But I could see, I could see a future where, I think that was a test to see if you had some kind of lobby area where people were interacting and there were some kind of, trinkets and stuff that you could purchase. Where I see this ultimately going is I see a game where you're waiting in the lobby or in the chat for the game to get going. And I see you being in a storefront, right? Where you can, figure out what weapons you want. You can figure out what textures you get. Destiny already does this to a certain degree. It's not a lobby. It's the junction points before you're, when you're between battles and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, I see that happening more and more often, right? I see them trying to figure out ways to convince you during the gaming experience, during the story experience, right? And where I hope this doesn't go is because I mean they're kind of already doing it. Like you play a game like Alan Wake, which I loved. I thought it was kind of shitty. Like fortunately I got it on the Xbox One as backward compatible, so it had all the DLC as part of it. But all I could think of when I beat the game, the stock game, was like, oh hell no, did they end it like that? So when the DLC drops, like it's not just like, oh, here's an extra mission. It's like, dude, if I want to know what happens next, I have to get the DLC. And so I get the DLC, right? And then that one ends, and it's like, son of a really, really, like, come on, like, I want to know what happened. And then, they ended up having Alan Wake's American Nightmare. There's a lot of folks out there still looking for Alan Wake 2. I'm one of them. But I think, unlike most people, I'm not waiting for Alan Wake 2 to tell me, right, what happens after Alan Wake. Alan Wake's American Nightmare is a sequel. I know people say, oh, it's a standalone game, blah, blah, blah. And while that's true, right, it's a standalone game that completes a story arc established in the DLC for the first game. So, yeah, if you're looking for the conclusion to the game Alan Wake, buy the 2 DLCs and play Alan Wake's American Nightmare. That's how they did it. So, what I was gonna say is I'm hoping that they don't go the route where, like,
episodic gaming.
They've already gone that route, right? They've already gone that route, but it's more of the I don't want to get to the point where, like, oh, hey, guess what? Like, you played this game. Well, if you want to see the deleted scenes, right? Like, buy this extra content or something like that, right? Like, I don't want them deliberately cutting stuff out of the game that they then. I mean, they're already doing that with characters and content and texture maps and stuff like that. But it would really piss me off if they made adjustments to games to allow advertising, like, more directly, and then had you buying content that maybe should have been there in place of the advertising. So
yeah,
this is mostly an issue for single player games. I really don't see how you successfully monetize single player games, which is probably why I'm not working on that problem for some company. Because I'm like, I don't want to do it. I don't think it's good for the customer. I think it's great for the game maker if they get it right. But just like with 3D movies, I see a lot of pain with them experimenting to try to get it right before they finally do. I see it taking them a good 5 to 10 years to really figure out how to do that. They're figuring it out a lot quicker with multiplayer, and we're already seeing the pains with that, right? Like, oh, this is gambling, this isn't acceptable, etc. With, like, people going nuts with Star Wars Battlefront. But I think they're going to keep trying. I think eventually they're going to get it, quote, right. And the thing to keep in mind is I don't think they're going to get it. We want them to get it right for us. The reality is they want to get it right for them.
Right.
So
Well, and that's my biggest concern too. Thinking about this moving forward is that you're going to get stuff piecemealed out even more. Um,
mhm.
and I mean, again, like single player, if they did do money per download sort of model thing or whatever,
Yeah,
I mean, piecemeal a game that's supposed to be one into 3 parts, and you get 3 times as many downloads, which is 3 times as much money, right? So,
they're doing that for Final Fantasy VII, right?
oh yeah.
So now I'm kind of torn on this one because having played through that whole, did you play the whole game and beat it?
Me? No.
Yeah,
I've
it
never
is
finished a Final Fantasy game. I've hardly ever played one.
Final Fantasy VII. I beat the game the first time I got all the way to Sephiroth, and I was too powerful for him to beat, and he was too powerful to beat me. And so after like fighting him for like, literally an hour, I was just like, the hell with this, and I turned off the game. And then I didn't feel like grinding, right? So I never went
Yeah.
back and did it, and that was on PC. And then later I was telling my wife about the game, and we got it for the PlayStation, and we kind of incentivized each other to go back and play it. And I'd found out that there'd been some side quests I missed and everything. So going through and playing the whole game through the second time, I think I played it for something like 80 hours. And I still didn't do every single side quest in the game. I still didn't do, hey, Sam the man. I still didn't do everything the game had to offer. And so there's just so much variety to the game. And the game was just so deep from like a story and a character perspective. Like literally, what I liked about Final Fantasy VII, and I think this is why it resonated with so many people, is it was one of the first Final Fantasies that really went deep into every party member's story. So you really got to know who all these people were, what made them tick. Even the side character, right? Like you didn't just like get like some side character that like joins your party and then like swap them in or swap them out. You got a whole story, a whole history with this side character, and you got a whole extra, extra set of stakes in the game for having that character. So, uh, that said, that can't be trivial to reproduce that experience, right? Like if I would rather have them do it episodically and commit to doing it and use the revenues from doing the first couple episodes to really make sure that they do the whole thing through proper, because we're not even talking about other stuff that they could be making as part of it too, right? We're not even talking about Crisis Core, which only ever came out on the mobile phone, which none of us ever saw here in the US, and the PlayStation Portable.
Yeah.
And to date, it's never been listed digitally anywhere. So either you have the UMD for PlayStation Portable, or you haven't played the game. And it's worth getting a PlayStation Portable and the UMD to play the game, I have to say. I haven't beaten it, but I've gotten more than halfway through it. I was playing it on a plane trip, and then I didn't get time to go back to it. But I'd love to be able to see that part of the remastered content because it was an excellent prequel to the game. I'd like to see stuff like Advent Children kind of content worked into the game in some way, and maybe some extra missions that are kind of like part of that. I'd love to see the Dirge of Cerberus game somehow somehow have that arc kind of like brought in. I've always wanted to see. I was really disappointed that Nintendo, I felt like there was a missed opportunity for both them and Sony to take the motion controls and apply it to the run and gun.
Uh,
um because the people's biggest complaint about it was that it's that it's kind of like a shooter, but the controls, thumb sticking with it really didn't do it for some people. I think the motion controls would have cleaned that up nicely. So I'd love to see something like that on the Switch or on the PlayStation with the Move controllers. So if this gives them the ability to do even half of that stuff, I think it would be worth it. Because to just rebuild that game from scratch, to give it the Shadow of Colossus HD treatment, you're talking like a decade long effort, and you're talking like tons and tons and tons of people and time and love that has to go into that game, tons of money. that has to go in that game, and the money has to come from somewhere. So
Yeah, so I mean, and one of the things too, I mean, I could easily see this happening just because as all these services go digital, games, we now have them on mobile phones and everything else. I mean, the gaming
mhm.
culture and how many people are gaming and what constitutes a game and stuff, I mean,
Yeah,
it's changing. So eventually, I'm sure we're going to get to the point where physical games and media are just kind of eh, and that would be a
yeah,
prime time for something like this to happen. So, especially with now cable TV, everyone's doing their own subscription thing. So, I don't know.
yeah.
I guess we'll see if it's just kind of a trend thing or if it really catches on.
So I think what Microsoft is doing, I think for Microsoft, it's already caught on, and this is why I say it. There's a reason why Microsoft doesn't care to get into the war with Sony about how many consoles it sold. Sony can brag and have it be all about selling consoles and selling games and all that other stuff, but Microsoft is targeting something that it realizes early is far more valuable, which is user engagement. You can have every home have a PlayStation 4, and if half the people are using it to watch Blu-rays and occasionally play some games, I mean, there's certain value there, right? But if you can get people to get on the console and subscribe to services, right? And you can give them meaningful services, quality services. Like I feel like Sony's done the whole like, oh, let's provide you services because we can probably monetize, make some money off of that. But I don't really feel, I still to date don't really feel like Sony has wholeheartedly tried to give us maximum value for those services.
Yeah.
Versus Microsoft is clearly looking at ways to give value for the platform and for the services. They want to draw you to the platform, and then however many people they draw on the platform, they want to keep you on the platform. They want to give you a reason to come back into the platform versus just sell you the platform, sell you some games. I'm good, right? So Microsoft in so I guess I want to be clear because people can say like, oh, they both have PlayStation, they both have a Plus service, of Forms. They both have a way to play games of Forms now and Game Pass. So what are you talking about, DashV? They're the same. When you look at everything that Sony uses to justify its position of dominance in the market, it's almost always about consoles sold, units sold, the number of exclusives that they have, and all that other stuff. When you hear Microsoft talk about it, you hear Microsoft talk about their community and how active their community is and how strong their community is and how much revenue per unit that community brings them, right? The ARPU, average revenue per user, right? They'll talk about. It's clear that yeah, it's kind of a bad acronym, right? So it's clear when Microsoft talks about that they're looking at how to get you engaged, keep you engaged, and monetize that engagement because they don't need to sell as many consoles as Sony or as Nintendo. They just need to keep you more engaged on their platform as Sony or Nintendo. And they just need to be able to provide opportunities to generate more revenue from you. If they can do that, then the publishers come to them automatically. Because for other folks, it's like, oh, there's a lot of folks going to the Switch right now because like the Switch is selling like hotcakes. We're going to sell a lot of copies of the game, right? But if the metrics pan out, that what happens is, yeah, people buy the Switch, they buy the game, and then they largely don't play it. That's not quite as good as if I had half as many users buy a game on the Xbox, play the hell out of it, engage in all these DLC, microtransactions, ad revenue, subscription service things, blah, blah, blah. And you make all this money. Like there's all this reoccurring money, like monthly money, reoccurring money, all that kind of stuff. So I think Microsoft is playing a long game here. And I think, if you look at what they're doing with the Xbox One X, trying to provide the premium platform. So, hey, if you want to play a multi-platform game, come over to us. We know that we're not strongest in exclusives, but if you want to play a multi-plat, we're trying to be the best platform for the multi-plat. Right. And once you're on us as the platform right, for the multi-plat. Guess what? Look at all this other stuff that you have. And oh, by the way, publishers that went multi-platform, look how much better your product looks. Look how much more engaged your user base is. Look at how much more money you're generating off of that user base. Do you really think when Sony pays you the money to get a timed exclusive on their platform that it's worth all the revenue that you're going to lose for that 1 year not having as active a user base as we have? And that's the game that Microsoft is trying to play right now. And we'll see for this year if that pans out for them. But and to be clear, like this is all like if you look at what Phil Spencer's talking about, if you work what Major Nelson's talking about, you look at all the stuff that they do. I mean, they are all about community engagement. And when you look at like some of the big games that they're targeting, like PlayerUnknown Battlegrounds, they know what the hell they're doing. There's a reason that they pursued that instead of some, you know, like Detroit Become Human. Detroit Become Human is going to be an amazing exclusive title on the PlayStation 4. I can't wait to play it on the Pro. But that said, that's not going to have the same level of long-term engagement with its user base. Not to mention interaction among the user base as something like PlayerUnknown Battlegrounds, which some people are calling like one of the most groundbreaking multiplayer games pretty much ever. And the Xbox One being the definitive console to play it on. So it'll come out later for the PlayStation 4 and it'll have popularity and everything, but I don't know that it's going to have the popularity that it'll have on the Xbox One. So we'll see. We'll totally see. And what'll be interesting is Sony will be talking about it in terms of sales. Microsoft is going to be talking about it in terms of engagement. So people could say like, "Oh, Microsoft, they're doing so bad in sales, they're not even talking about it." The flippity flip, I'd ask, how come PlayStation's not talking about engagement? The only time you really hear about engagement on a Sony platform is usually when you're talking about how pissed off people are that Sony's done something that hurt them, right? Like lost all their credit cards, right? or you know, like, and then giving you a free copy of, you know, oh, we'll give you a free copy of Infamous. Infamous 2 is only like 2 months away from launch. I wonder why the free copy of Infamous 1 for losing my credit card, right? So I think you'll see more stuff like that too. And Microsoft has done this a bit, like bundling of content in order to kind of entice a sale. So I got Alan Wake games and stuff for as part of buying Quantum Break.
Yeah.
I have no complaints on that. What do the games have to do with each other? Nothing. They were made by the same publisher. That's it. So, or the same studio rather. Microsoft was the publisher, but yeah, they were made by the Remedy. So, yeah. So I think you're gonna keep hearing this year PlayStation talk about install base, and you're gonna hear Microsoft keep talking about activity within their install base. So, and I think when you're looking at monetizing your user base, the activity is what ultimately wins the day. So the question will really be not does Microsoft have more people, but does it have more active people that are more monetizable than PlayStation or Switch?
And there you go. You know,
There you
this
have it, my
this
friend.
this generation, well, and it's funny, I don't want to get into another big discussion here or anything since we need to wrap things up, but
Yeah.
depending on who you ask, you know, what people are saying about who's kind of the big winner of this generation of consoles right now. It's kind of all over the place depending on what you're looking at and who you ask and stuff. So it's proving to be an interesting console generation for sure.
Oh, it definitely is. If you had told me, you know, 4 years ago that I'd be on a game show talking about advertising, right, and advertising strategy, I would have said, "What the hell's that got to do with gaming?" But unfortunately, I think, you know, fast forward to a year from now, I expect you and I to be revisiting this conversation, and I expect in some cases for it to be certainly a landscape that was filled with interesting surprises, but I also see it a landscape that's maybe filled with some heartache and lamenting for the way that things used to be. I see it being a bittersweet future for gaming. But you know, generally speaking, you know, on the bright side, I don't see games going away. So it may just be harder to find, you know, the experiences that we want to have. If you're a multiplayer gamer, I think what we're seeing is that popularity wise, right? Like these things wouldn't be making the money if people weren't having fun. So if folks are having fun, right, doing what they're doing and spending on what they're spending on, and more people are having fun, um, inevitably, I think there'll be some kind of niche, right? Something will come out, something will emerge that says, "Hey, look, remember when?" And it'll be almost like a legit Coleco chameleon, right? Like somebody will come out with a legit platform that kind of harkens back to some of that stuff. But yeah, that'll be interesting. Or what'll probably end up happening. What I would love to see is I'd love to see both Sony, Microsoft, and Nintendo, all three of them. I'd love to see them just bust their friggin' libraries wide open, right? Like if they had a subscription model, but it was like every friggin' game that they ever had in the catalog, or even just most of them, that would be an amazing time for gaming. So, and I think the consoles have finally become powerful enough to where that can be pulled off through emulation and various other means. So, the question is, am I going to have to sit through ads before I can play, you know, the original NES Final Fantasy? Or I guess the boss battles take long enough in that game to where you should
An
go
unskippable ad instead of like. No,
you kind of
I
broke
don't
up
know.
there, right?
I said an unskippable, like they always talk about how the boss character has the unskippable dialogue and you have to go
Yeah.
into the fight. It'll be like that, but it's the unskippable ad.
Yeah.
No, I don't know. I could see when you're having the intro stuff for the game, having like a quick ad or something before you
Yeah.
get into it. I don't know.
You
We'll
know, the
we'll
last
see.
thing I'll throw out there, the last thing I'll throw out there, 'cause this just kind of popped in my head regarding the advertising. What would be really interesting would be if they leverage the nostalgia for the ads, right? Like one way that you might be able to get the ads in there that's not like a total in your face thing. Like imagine this. Imagine if Nintendo had a free tier for a subscription-based virtual console, right? Where like you go to play Super Mario 3 or something like that, or you're playing Super Mario 2 or whatever, right? And before you can play Super Mario 2, they show you like the old commercial for Super Mario 3, right? Like that you remember from when you were a kid. Like I could see people actually going, it's a commercial, but I'll take it. Like, because that's kind of like nostalgia, right? And I mean, there's tons of folks that have uploaded old commercials and stuff like that, and they get millions of views and stuff for some of these like really old like 80s and 90s, commercials. Oh, last bit. There's a channel on Roku that I discovered called Con TV, CON TV. It's for like Comic Con, I guess, like TV or whatever. You can download it. It's free. They have a like sign up or whatever. I don't know if there's a paid tier or whatever, but the reason that I'm bringing it up is because if you just go and say like I want to browse, you can actually watch the Super Mario Brothers Super Show and the Legend of Zelda cartoons. They have every single episode of both, and you can watch them for free. You don't actually have to buy a subscription or sign up for an account or whatever. You can just go Con TV, search for it on your Roku, add the channel for free, go in, don't log in, just go ahead and go to the browse the content, go down until you get to the category Saturday morning cartoons, and they've got Zelda and Super Mario Brothers. They have all the different versions of it too. They have the versions where they had the live action part and the cartoon part.
Gosh.
And then they also have the like the Super Mario 3 version, the Super Mario 2 version. So yeah. So I want to throw that out there for you guys. But it'd be really interesting if some of the commercials from that area that were still valid, the companies are still around, the product is still around. That might be a way for companies to start to kind of introduce that advertising in a way that's kind of more nostalgic, right? Than kind of in your face advertising, right? And it would be like the whole like, oh, well, only available in the Nintendo Ultimate tier or whatever, right?
Yeah. Well, and I could see when you close a game out, and again, this could be a way for Microsoft to get money. That kind of like Steam does. When you close out the app, it pulls up the window and you get like the ads again in that little window. And I could see when you close out a game, they're like, hey, here's
Yeah.
an ad for this other game you might like or something. I don't know. Well,
Yeah.
it'll be interesting, if not perhaps a little bit scary, but
I am
we'll
scared.
see.
I'm genuinely scared. But we'll get through it together, my friends. We'll get through it together. What are your thoughts, right? About what do you think about me eating McDonald's and staying perfectly trim? I wish I could say jacked, but that'd be a load of jack. So what do you think about digital? What do you think about? Do you think I'm lowering my standards? Do you think I'm flip flopping? What do you feel about like political ads in your racing games? All that kind of stuff that we talked about. Do you welcome an advertising based future? I mean, on the one hand, these companies are going to have way more money to make games, so it could be that they make 3, 4 microtransaction driven games, and then maybe a small splinter cell of folks inside the team get some money to make something amazing that doesn't have any of that. That could happen. That's more likely to happen if the company has more money than if it has less money. So, because I think one thing that has been happening is kind of a vacuum, or maybe not a vacuum, but there's been a scarcity of risk taking by the big companies, and I think that's been to protect their revenue stream. But if they can make the revenue stream in other ways, maybe we'll see them take more risks.
Yeah,
So
risk
it'll be
taking pays
exciting.
off sometimes.
Yep, it'll be exciting and scary, but we will be here with you through it. So take it easy, guys.